Hello, podcast listeners. Thank you for tuning in to the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast today. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to implore you, share this lovely show, the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. It's how we grow. Make sure you are subscribed. Give us a good rating and review. It sure does help us out, maybe more than you might think. Today, we are talking about a very interesting subject. It's a subject that I've been really diving into deep lately, and it ties in more than one might think when it comes to health and wellness and coffee even. Today, we're talking about flow states. This is a term that you may have heard before. It's something you've definitely experienced in your life before. And little did I know that one of my good friends is kind of an expert on the subject of flow. Today on the line, we have a return guest, Dr. Joel Wade. He is a happiness expert, a self-esteem expert. He studied under Nathaniel Branden. You can go back and listen to our first episode if you want to find out more about Joel's work. And of course, his amazing course, the Mastering Happiness course, master course. You can find that at drjoelwade.com. What's up, Joel? Was that a good intro? Did I get everything there?
Yeah, that's great, Jordan. Thanks.
I've got it down now. Yeah, we've spoken enough to where I actually have it. I have it memorized like the back of my hand, Dr. Joel.
Yeah. It just flowed, so to speak.
Exactly. So it's interesting, Joel, because we talk a lot about personal development when we do shows together. We talk about character, we talk about self-esteem, we talk about happiness. But flow has come up a couple times, and then I'm doing these deep dive Zoom calls with some really, really intelligent and talented people, and flow is coming up on these calls so much, and it pinged in my head. I remember Joel talking about flow. So talk to me about how you got introduced to this concept, and then also how you kind of met the Godfather of Flow, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is the fellow that did the huge research on flow over many years, and he's a brilliant researcher and very funny guy too. And he's got a very good humor about him. And actually, his book about it is, the subtitle is The Psychology of Optimal Experience. So flow is very much the state of mind where we're most engaged, we're most happy, though we're not thinking that we're happy. We're not thinking about our feelings.
True.
We're not absorbed in our own internal experience. We're absorbed in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So it's not until after we're done that we look back and go, wow, that was cool.
That's so true. Can you define flow for maybe someone who's never heard of a flow state, or give some examples?
Yeah, well, it's the state of total absorption in work or play or relationship. So that when, I'm sure we've all had the experience of being involved with something, but our mind's somewhere else.
Right.
Or we're talking with somebody, but we have a question on our mind that's unfinished, and we're kind of holding on to it. We're not totally connected with the person in that moment. We're kind of distracted. That's an example of not being in flow. But I'm sure you've also had experiences, like I can think at times of conversations where all of a sudden you look at the clock, or you look at your watch or your phone, and all of a sudden 3 hours has gone by and it seems like it's been 10 minutes.
Right.
Or you read a book and it's so absorbing that before you know it, the sun's down and you start reading it in the morning. And so time just sort of pours by because you're totally absorbed. You're not thinking about other stuff.
Right.
And that state of mind, what Csikszentmihalyi did is he had people carrying around there used to be these things called beepers, pagers, and
okay, yeah,
and they make a noise, and then when they got a beep, they would write down what they're doing, what they're feeling. And so there's a whole range of experience that was captured, just thousands and thousands of these data points. And we found out things like, when people are watching TV, the most common experience is sort of a mild depression.
Whoa.
And even if it's a funny sitcom, it's okay, but I'm kind of low.
Right.
And the state where people were most happy when they stopped and reflected on what they're doing right now, they were in this state of total absorption in whatever it is. They're playing something, or they're working, they're on a task at work, or they're in conversation, or they're snuggling with their wife or their husband, or they're just all there.
Okay.
In what they're doing.
Let me ask you this then, because those all seem like they're very in the moment experiences, meaning that is the meditative state, right? You aren't, it's very Buddhist and Zen. You aren't thinking about your attachments. You aren't thinking about your expectations. You aren't thinking about anything. You're only in the moment. Flow states, I kind of feel, bleed into the realm of performance. No? Does it usually involve doing something, and usually at a like you said, an optimal level?
Yeah, that's an essential ingredient. So ideally, for the most intense of flow state, you want to be doing something that challenges your skill level. So that, say you have real high skills at something, and what you're engaged in has very low demands. Well, that's going to be kind of boring after a while. It might be okay for a few minutes, but pretty soon it's just going to be, I've done this a million times.
That's true.
It'll be boring. If you have low skill levels and a high demand, that's going to be overwhelming and stressful and anxiety producing. If you have low skills and low challenge, that's kind of okay, but you don't get that really meaty satisfaction.
Right.
You're just starting out.
That's just the beginning. Exactly. Yeah.
But if you have high skills and a high challenge, that's where the treasure is. That's where you can really sink your teeth into it and dive in. And it can be very intellectually challenging. You might be thinking a whole lot, but you're thinking completely about what you're thinking about. Or you might be in, like, I play water polo, and a water polo game, part of the joy of it is there's nothing else going on in my life when I'm playing. I'm all in, and I'm very revved up. So it's not exactly like a meditation, what most people think of as meditation, but I'm pushing myself and challenging myself to bring my very best to it. And that's a flow state. And so that's where you get that, you're being challenged and stretched. And so your skills are increasing while you're in it. And so in a real optimal flow state, you come out more complex for having done it.
Oh, I love that. You come out the other side more complex.
Yeah. And that's what our brains love to have: organization. They love to have a sense of structure. And when we create our own structure, that's part of the satisfaction. Now, we can have a sort of flow state, like watching TV or doing a video game where everything is sort of laid out for us. But when we're done with it, we're not more complex for it. You're probably not going to remember that episode of the TV show in much depth.
Or that one video game match standing out to you. No, these moments of flow are actually rather crucial and integral to memories, looking back on memories for a happy and fulfilling life, as you always say, a life that you can be proud of.
Yeah, and if you reflect a little bit on your best experiences, things that stand out in your life, things you're proud of or are really happy about or delighted by, if you look back on them, they were probably flow states.
Yes, that's a really good point. Can I give you an analogy, and you can tell me if it's apt, and you can tell me how brilliant I am for making this, but I kind of feel that flow states are really a deep range of how far you immerse yourself in the immersion, if you will. Meaning, the further you get away from the surface of the earth, the more you start, the less gravity you feel, and the more you start to be able to float into the heavens, right? So when you're just, in the moment on the couch, in a flow state, that's just a little bit just, a little bit off the ground, a little bit of elevation. When you're using your body, it gets to another level. When you're challenging yourself, challenging your high skills, now you're at that point you were talking about, you're playing water polo, and you're in the moment and you're pushing yourself. I also think that there's another layer you really get out of the stratosphere when things are working out. You're in that moment. You play goalie, right? You're in the moment in water polo, but you're blocking every shot.
Yes.
And the more shots you block, with every shot that you block, you're getting further and further into the stratosphere, deeper in flow, and your skill level ceiling is increasing as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's, success builds on itself. I mean, one of the things as a goalkeeper, I know if I come out strong the first couple of minutes, if I don't allow any shots to go in the first couple of minutes, I'm going to have an easier time the rest of the game, because the people shooting are going to be more reluctant, because they're going to have to be more careful.
You broke their flow. Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of similar, I think, when we're working on anything. If we're writing and things are coming to us and passages are flowing out beautifully, that builds on itself. And sometimes it's more of a hard slog and you have to kind of pull the words out. The success builds that sense of flow as well.
Right.
You want to have a sense that you're moving along.
And there are these components that really propel flow from a mild feeling to a euphoric and lifelong memorable experience. Like all of those key components will add up occasionally and result in that.
So not every flow state is a peak experience. So like I was describing writing, because I write a lot, I can be very much in flow even when it's a hard slog, just so I'm totally absorbed in it. But it feels really, that sense of peak experience comes when it's coming easily and I'm meeting a lot of success. So struggle isn't antithetical to flow. It can be very much part of the engagement. But if I'm totally in that struggle, I'm still in a state of flow. That's
true. That segues perfectly into this kind of observation I was making after doing these deep dives, and this bleeds into the study of masculine and feminine energies. And this is going to get a little bit out there, but I work with Stefanos Sifandos. Anyone who has Instagram needs to follow this guy, but he's a relationship expert. He talks about the masculine and the feminine. We're not going to get too far off course here. Here's what I'm saying. After studying flow and doing the little research that I've done, I kind of came to a bit of a personal conclusion. I believe that the most pure example of flow are as follows, and they're split into two categories: masculine and feminine. Masculine, fighting. Boxing, fighting, wrestling. It's the culmination of every competition, right? If things get too heated on the basketball court, if things get too heated on the NFL field, what does it evolve into? It always evolves into a fight. This is the ultimate experience of my will, my skills against yours. Something interesting about fighting also is usually after a fight, there's everything's better. Everything's resolved. Two boxers who hate each other will go into the ring, they'll fight it out, and they'll be hugging each other, literally kissing each other sometimes after a fight. So I think that there's something to be said about flow states when it comes to fighting, because it's always the boxer who's in more of flow who wins every time. Slick beats strength every time. Now let's turn it to the other side before I know you want to weigh in here, Joel. The feminine, dancing. I think that dancing is the purest expression of flow on the feminine side, because again, it's the culmination of any other moment. Like literally, if you're happy enough and in a flow state, you physically transform into a dancing being. It's really wild. And then here's the real mind bender, Joel. The best fighters, the most prime, the epitome of flow when it comes to fighters they
Yeah.
all incorporate dance into their fighting. They
Mm.
start dancing in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Even some of the greats like Floyd Mayweather, but the
Uh-huh.
obvious examples, your Muhammad Ali's, your
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
exactly, baby. And there are countless examples, even to the drunken master himself, Emmanuel Augustus. And now I'm digging deep for the fight fans, but that was kind of my revelation. And what do you think about that? Kind of the culminating moments of flow.
Well, I think you can find a lot of uh, different kinds of experiences like that. But one thing I really wanted to grab hold on that is um, when I'm playing water polo, or when you see somebody playing a sport and they lose it, when they get angry,
Yes,
they're toast.
exactly.
And the reason is, when they do that, they've dropped into their sympathetic nervous system of fight or flight. And when you're in total competition mode in a game or in a sport, your system is revved up, and it's revved up high. It's ready for whatever action needs to happen. But a skilled athlete rides the edge of not dropping into the sympathetic nervous system. So
Wow.
you're revved up, but you're still very much connected with your higher brain function, because when you're in your sympathetic nervous system, you lose contact. You're not able to distinguish vocal tones or facial expressions. You're in a tunnel vision, and it's designed to help us deal with a physical threat in the moment,
Wow.
to react and get away, or make a last ditch fight for our lives.
Which is the opposite of flow, which is what our
Exactly.
higher brains making very complex decisions easily with little to no pressure.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And so that's why when you see an athlete performing at their best, it's not just intensely, inspiring, but it's beautiful.
Yes.
It's beautiful because they're flowing. And like when I'm playing water polo, I'm totally connected to all of my teammates. And I'm connected with all of my opponents,
Right.
because I need to be aware of any small signal in their body language that they might let go of that ball in my direction,
That's so
even if they
crazy.
look relaxed over there.
But you
Like
wouldn't
they're
pick
gonna.
up. I like what you said about the facial tone, or the vocal
Yeah.
tones and the facial expressions, because
Yep.
you wouldn't pick up on those little things, and those are the things that the grandmasters use. Another great
That's right.
example of flow is the great
Yeah.
Larry Bird. I was
Oh
always an
yeah.
NBA fan, but I just recently went back to Larry Bird, and he was aggressive. Talk about
Yeah.
not exactly compassionate flow, but it was beautiful to watch him. He would say what he was going to do. I'm going to tell it to the person he's going to do it to. I'm going to dribble down court. I'm going to go left, and I'm going to score. And then you would see him do it, and that's very
Yep.
high brain functioning. That's
Yeah.
not a reaction. He thought that
Yeah.
out and then manifested it.
Absolutely.
So wow.
So so it's very a flow state is not when I think of a meditative state, that can be complex, but it also can be just serenity.
Mm.
But the flow state can be that, or it can be totally engaged and uh, revved up,
Yeah.
as high as you can rev up without dropping over the edge into fight or flight.
Yeah, all the
It
way
can also
into a
be,
state of chaos, almost like a
yeah,
beautiful chaos.
yeah, but not chaos.
Right. Kind of embraced.
because flow is all about organizing our experience. It's about taking hold of and organizing our experience. If I have a game to play, or if I have a talk to give, or if I have a part to build for the machine I'm working on, or if I have whatever the task is, um, I'm building complexity as I'm in that flow state. And that's also true for engagement with another human being, like
Mm.
we are right now. I'm totally in flow with you right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. But podcasting is one of those things where I have no concept of time when I'm
Yeah.
on with
Yeah.
a guest so distinguished as Joel, of course.
Yeah. And the thing about that is, if you understand how strange and unique each one of us is on the inside, each one of us is a world inside,
Right.
and we tend to kind of uh, think we know people all the
Simplify
way,
people. Yes.
especially people we've known for a long time. We go, oh, I know him, I know her. This is how they are. No, you know a little bit. There's a whole world to get to know. I mean, my wife and I have been together almost 30 years, and we're still getting to know each other. But you have to turn that on. You have to be interested. You have to be curious about the other person. And that's what allows you to be in a state of flow with another person,
Oh, that's
is that
wonderful, man.
sense of curiosity and interest in their world.
I love that
And if you,
relationship work that you do, man. It's so crucial.
mm,
It's so crucial
yeah,
to a healthy life.
yeah, it is. And it's so rich. There's so much there. It's endless.
Mm. I want to talk though. I want to bring it back to you said meditative states, and we're here on
Yeah.
health. We're talking about
Mhm.
a healthy, happy life. That's what Joel's all about. Flow and health. You talk about meditative states and how flow kind of has one foot in that realm.
Yeah.
We had Dr. Sanjeev Chopra from Harvard Medical come on and talk about the meditative, the meditative state's effect on telomeres, on your genes,
Oh, yeah.
on the caps of your genes, and if they fray, then you're more susceptible to all these abnormalities, and it's shown to be
Right.
directly linked to a lower lifespan. And meditation is not only incredibly healthy, it's going to increase your lifespan. Do
Yeah.
you feel that flow falls into that same category?
I I don't know, because I haven't seen data that specifically measures that. But I'd be surprised if it didn't.
That's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, because when you're in a state of flow, you're in you're basically in a very joyful state of connection with whatever you're doing or whoever you're doing it with. And the more time we spend in that kind of place, we're in our higher brain function. We're in that place. We have a better heart rate variability. Our immune system is stronger.
Right.
There's more of a relationship and a communication between our organs and our brain and our nervous system. It's a very healing place to be.
That's crazy.
That's why being in our sympathetic nervous system in fight or flight, whether we're getting freaked out with anxiety or blowing up at somebody with anger or rage, that's not healthy, because we're in our emergency, desperate survival place.
Right.
And so anytime that we're not there and we're in our higher brain function, just naturally a healthier place for our bodies to be in.
That's exactly what Sanjeev was saying too. And that makes sense. But I'll tell you, I think there may be even more to it. Like you said, I'd be surprised if there wasn't that same effect. But the other thing about flow states, unlike meditation, is, well, I don't know if that's exactly true, but it's different. Flow states, you can look back years later. And not only do you look back fondly, you actually get a taste of that same feeling, that same experience. It's more lingering. You don't usually look back and go, remember that meditation from 18 months ago where I just really, man, I meditated my socks off. But no, when you look back on some of your proudest moments in flow, you're back there and your eyes glaze over a little bit and you enter that meditative state on the spot. So I think that there's almost a bit of a time release effect with flow states.
Yeah, I think so too. It changes us. We're different. If we enter a flow state with something that's a high challenge and we have high skills for, we're different on the other side of it. We will have changed. We're more complex. We understand more. We have a broader range of awareness, even if it's just a little bit. Let's say you read a really engrossing, challenging novel that's not just kind of a entertaining, but it really makes you think, and you have to really process it. You're a different person after reading.
Yeah, you're expanding. That's right.
Yeah. And if you create something, if you write something, or if you make a podcast, and you explore new territory, you're different for that. And that's one of the hallmarks of a flow state.
So I was thinking of doing a morning show I've been kicking this idea around for a long time and talking to the great folks at Purity Coffee. And I've also been looking to dive into flow. And I think that these two ideas might come together. And I might do a morning show called Wake Up and Flow. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, I really want to go into how to leverage these flow states. I mean, now that I've started to think about them, like it kind of changes the way you go throughout your day. And I want to dig into the science of these flow states. I want to figure out practical ways to induce them. You know what I mean? From a scientific perspective, are you familiar with like what's happening in the brain? I was doing some research in the link between emotions and neuropeptides, and this possible link between flow states and neuropeptides. Are you familiar with any of this?
I have some knowledge about it. I'm not an expert on it, but it is part of what I've looked at. And yeah, the main thing is to understand how biological we are.
Right.
Our experience isn't just, we're not machines, we're not steam engines, we're not computers. We have elements of all those things. I mean, our muscles enable us to do mechanical things. I can contract my muscle in my arm, and my hand comes closer to my body. Part of my brain works like a computer, gathering data and making computations.
Right.
But that's just part of who we are. So much of who we are is physiological, and we have all these cycles. We have circadian rhythms, and we have ebbs and flows. We breathe in and we breathe out, and our mood system will bring us up when that's appropriate and bring us down when that's appropriate. There's reasons for both. And so
it's also biochemical is what I'm realizing, Dr. Joel.
Yeah.
I just learned doing this research about these neuropeptides and how they enter your cells, and they're just it's a chemical compound. This neuropeptide is a chain of amino acids, and it enters your cell and begins basically vibrating and agitating the cell. And depending on what constitutes that neuropeptide, that vibration results in your mood. There's a neuropeptide. There's a neuropeptide for happiness. There's a neuropeptide for anger. There's a neuropeptide for sadness. There's all of this. And here's a really freaky one, Joel. This might open some eyes to the people like me with the road rage issues out there. When you're in a state and those neuropeptides are in your cells and those cells replicate, they are more attractive or more likely to be occupied by that same neuropeptide. So I'm sure you probably know this already, but the more happy you are, the easier it is to be happy. The more often you're angry, the easier it is to be angry. Like this is trackable to the biochemical level.
Yeah, we get good at what we practice, for better or worse.
It's so crazy though, because like you said, humans are so much more. They are so cosmic and spiritual, but also it's like here's the biochemistry determining exactly what's going on. It's really wild. And coffee, Dr. Joel. Sorry, but just take a turn here. Coffee is loaded with hundreds. I mean, some of these compounds, we don't even know how many amino acids are in coffee. And that's what neuropeptides are constructed of. And it's interesting because we hear customers who drink Purity, who drink high quality coffee, and they don't have the negative effects. They're able to enter flow states easier. I wonder how much you can alter your chemistry through diet, through lifestyle changes, through supplementation, in order to produce these states.
I think it makes a big difference. I mean, one of the most effective intervention for depression, for example, is particularly mild to moderate depression, is exercise.
Right.
And diet has a huge effect. If you have 7 helpings of vegetables in a day, you're immensely less likely to be depressed.
Well, does that have to directly do with your body's looking for the right compounds, for the right neuropeptides, but the amino acids aren't there because you're eating Ruffles?
I really don't know, because I mean that's a level of physiology,
bionutrition.
But I do know the bigger picture. There's been a lot of research about what kinds of diets can influence our mood, and our susceptibility to depression, or like omega-3s. Fish oil has been studied to decrease angry outbursts.
It's all Mediterranean. They all want you to eat Mediterranean food. It's all Mediterranean food, folks.
Yeah. That's a good rule of thumb right there. Is just a lot of veggies and different colored veggies and
seafood, healthy fats, right? Tons of olives and healthy cheeses. None of that cheese whiz, none of that American cheese bull crap. They're eating all the good olives, all the good cheese, all the good fish, all the good vegetables. And apparently it works. Go figure.
Yeah, it does. But a lot of people zero in on the olive oil and the red wine. But mainly it's the vegetables.
Yeah. Okay.
and that the people, that created the Mediterranean diet also, they walk around a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
They're not sitting around a lot. So
it's
a combination of a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting, Dr. Joel.
Yeah, and in fact, I've seen some research about our gut bacteria and how the populations of our gut bacteria can change depending on our diet. It affects our cravings. So that's part of why it takes a while to get used to not having so much sugar or having more vegetables before it starts tasting. It
takes a while to get used to it. It's like kicking a street drug. You have to get through the first 3 days. One of my favorite comedians talks about this. He goes, and he's so right. The salt and sugar work together. You get the junk food, the burger and fries, and then it primes you to want an ice cream cone or a soda on the side, and that sends you skyrocketing, and then you drop back down and you're ready for some salt. And he always says, just give it 3 days to get that monkey off your back, to get that demon off your back. Give it 3 days. And you're right, it changes. And the next time you bite into a Snickers, you're like, holy cow, this thing is way too sweet.
Ow.
Exactly. Yeah. You take a bite of a prune and you're like, oh, this is a real treat.
Yeah. Right.
It's so strange, man. I love it. That's literally what we're all about on this podcast. Thank you to all the subscribers and listeners who support this show, because it's just so fascinating to talk about alternative wellness, to talk about health and nutrition, and maybe most exciting, to talk about how coffee plays into all of this. So I love this work. I really do. And thank you to the listeners. And thank you, Dr. Joel, for being the guest today. Can we have you back on? I feel like we were just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. Happy to do this anytime, Jordan. It's
Amazing.
Always a pleasure.
Dr. Joel, I forgot to bring up the podcast that I help you produce, the Mastering Happiness podcast. I'll put it in the show notes right at the top. But I apologize. Okay. I said in the beginning, did I get everything? And I didn't. I forgot your awesome podcast. Oh, gosh. The Mastering Happiness podcast, available on Spotify, iTunes, everywhere. It's so good. The content is so good. It's practical tools and principles for a healthier, happier life. What more could you ask for?
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Joel. Everyone, stay tuned. Stay tuned for more Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. Stay tuned for more Flow Talk with Joel. And maybe stay tuned for a brand new show. I'm thinking a morning show format, short form, take it with your coffee. We'll see how that goes. All right, everybody. This is Jordan River and Dr. Joel Wade signing off, wishing you an extraordinary day. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast.